Hey friend, listen. I know the world is scary right now. Corruption, war, inflation, demographics, degeneracy, disease, unrest, hatred, and despair. We didn't come here to tell you how it is, but that it's going to get way better.
Got a good thing coming, and it's all I need. Everything I want, just wait and see.
Better by Bitcoin.
Hey, welcome to the show. Super stoked to be here with Anton and Bondor. Very excited about our topic of the day, which is, are you trapped in Bitcoin? There's a couple different ways to be trapped in Bitcoin. I think the thing that we were all talking about that's the most difficult and actually unique in terms of being trapped in Bitcoin is not necessarily the monetary aspect of it, but the logical aspect of it. I think that's what we want to unpack today. How do you find yourself trapped in the Bitcoin mindset? Trapped in a fiat world where people just can't see or understand what you see and understand. Trapped around normies. And yeah, I think that's kind of it, right? I'll start this kind of with a quote from Henry Ford. It's a great book that I'm reading right now, Henry Ford's autobiography, which is Henry Ford, My Life and Work. And one of the things that he talks about, actually, chapter pretty much 11 through 13 is Bitcoin. Like, Henry Ford actually was the first one to posit Bitcoin back in this fiat world, back right after 1913 when the Federal Reserve happened. He was kind of like belaboring this point that we cannot have a centralized monetary aspect because the bankers will just become worse. And so what's really interesting that he was saying back then, though, is, I mean, this is probably the way to start off, is one of the quotes in the book is, it is easier to make money from money than it is to make money from business. Don't take the acumen of banksters as any guide for business. All they know is money. The fiat mentality is, I'm just going to put more money, printing, into the money machine to make more money. That has nothing to do with providing better service, better business, better whatever. It's just literally a money lever to solve a money problem. What are you guys seeing in, what you see all over LA or all over your specific industries that are kind of mirroring that? Like, how are you trapped in the Bitcoin mindset? It was a terrible intro, by the way, guys. So thanks for just going with me. The three people watching this also with my camera frozen. This is just awesome. We're off to a great start.
Good time.
Hey, you came up with the phrase "trapped by normies," which I really
currently
appreciate.
I'm trapped by normie fiat computer brain, as my computer does not want to do anything with this. So,
Bondor, do you want to go with it? Do you feel trapped by Bitcoin?
I mean, I definitely feel trapped by Bitcoin in that my economic allegiance is to a Bitcoin denominated reality versus everyone else's economic allegiance, which is to a fiat denominated reality. So the way that they process all of the world is in fiat terms. The way that I process all of the world is in Bitcoin terms. And the differentiation there is massive. For instance, in the fiat world, in fiat terms, housing is super expensive. If housing is super expensive in a fiat world, in fiat terms, there's nothing you can do about it apart from make more money or move to somewhere else where housing is cheaper, right? There's almost like no other solution there. So what does that do to the culture? It says, oh yeah, you just got to move to somewhere cheaper, or you just got to, but it never actually solves any of the problems, right? It doesn't say, well, maybe we should build more houses. Well, I mean, that's certainly a solution, but that costs so much more money too, and the rest of that. But what it really does is just say, oh yeah, you can move, you can exit, you can do the super fiat things, but all that's really doing is just kicking the can down the road, right? It's you then move to Tennessee, like the In-N-Out founder or the In-N-Out owner is now done. There's the big news this week. So you're moving to Tennessee, but all you're really doing is just making it more expensive for everyone to live in Tennessee because it's just more demand in Tennessee. You're not actually solving any root problems or issues. So as a Bitcoiner, all I just see is that problem. No one's actually solving the root issues here. No one's actually solving the root problems. I'm like stuck in this mindset of like, there's nothing that can be done to fix that apart from just get on a Bitcoin standard. And then all of it changes, all of it turns around, all of it says, oh, well, instead of moving somewhere to solve this problem, which doesn't actually solve it for anybody, it just makes it worse for everybody. If I just denominate in Bitcoin, the problem's solved. I'm no longer aligned to that ideology that thinks that I can move there and figure it out. So yeah, I mean, and then you only see that everywhere. You're just totally trapped. Like, and you see with every single problem, you can just like go down the list of like, oh yeah, well, that's just the fact that people are just stuck on fiat. Oh, it's mind boggling. I can go on.
Yeah. Let's take the In-N-Out founders moving to Nashville. I don't know exactly. I know they're moving a portion
owner, not founder, but yeah, they're moving their family there. They're not moving the company, right?
Yeah, I think the founder is unfortunately tragically passed away like a decade ago.
It's his daughter, I believe. His daughter is worth $8 billion. I can't remember her name, but so is she moving to Nashville? Is that the idea? Just she personally is moving there,
right? And her family, and she's justifying it with like, well, it's cheaper for us, it's cheaper for In-N-Out employees, like blah blah blah.
Yeah, they don't have a state income tax, and I'm sure some element of the corporate wing of executives, people with a high salary, are moving to Nashville. So you have a lower cost of living in a place like Nashville than in Southern California, because let's face it, Nashville's cool, Tennessee's cool, it's great. It is not as desirable of a geographic region as California is. It's just not. California is the best place in America. You could argue that somewhere like Hawaii or something is nicer, but it's isolated, is an island isolated in the middle of the South Pacific. California, continental United States, easy to get anywhere. And geographically is the best. The climate's the best. The stuff that is here that has been built here is the best. The ideas that have come out of it as a result are the best. California is the best place to live, but it has an incredibly high state income tax for the income earner. It has other high taxes, burdens on corporations. And so for those people, like let's take Joe Rogan, for example. His original contract with Spotify was $200 million. His second contract was like 230 or 250. I looked it up the other day. Personally, by moving to Austin, establishing residency there before he moved, he saved and was able to pocket about $60 million. $60 million that would have just gone to the state of California had he not done that. So for him, it makes total sense. Even if California is technically the better state to live in, he has an extra $60 million to do whatever he wants to. He can add to his personal lifestyle all the things that he's missing from not technically living in California. He could buy a private jet and fly to California in a few hours anytime he wants to. Like if he wants to go for a trail run in California, he can literally fuel up his private jet, fly to California, go on a run, and fly back home to Austin if he wants to. But for most people, it's not that much of a benefit. It's just a little bit more of a benefit. So yeah, I just want to say that about the whole story about In-N-Out moving to Nashville. It's not what people are making of it. And for most people who live in California now, I would argue you're going to have a better quality of life if you stay in California, as long as California doesn't become like absolutely communist and isn't like actively taking away your rights. Your life is going to be better in California than if you go move to Austin or Nashville for most people. My opinion.
And look, I mean, you're 100% right. Like Joe Rogan saves $60 million, right? But again, he's just playing the system too. He's not actually solving any problems for anybody else except for himself, right? So like, yeah, move to like, if you have the extra $60 million, sure. Move to Nashville, save the $60 million, apply that $60 million to a marketing campaign against the Federal Reserve Bank that just, plasters billboards that say the Federal Reserve Bank is evil. Like, and then, systematically put that into the public conscious. Like, the reason that I have to do any of this at all is because fiat's evil. And therefore, like, actually start addressing the real problems. Don't just, and that this just speaks to the general principle. I mean, there's another, I think it was what's the guy, Andrew Tate, like one of his tweets, it was like, yeah, once you get to $500 million, there's just nothing to do anymore. You can just only, like, there's no way to spend your money. You can buy yachts, etc., but then you're just bored. You have yachts, you got the yachts. It's like, there's nothing to do with your money. And it's like, all you're doing is solving problems for yourself. You are not actually pushing society forward or doing anything that's useful or valuable or value add, or, like, I don't know, helping anybody here on earth. Right. JD.
I totally agree with that. And I think, actually, as much as I don't wish ill on anybody, but I feel like this is another quote from, I really do think Henry Ford's book, My Life and Work, is a phenomenal read. I highly recommend every Bitcoiner to do it. I would say it's as important as a sovereign individual from a perspective of seeing a industrial titan of the early 1900s see Bitcoin. Again, he was the one who posited it in the New York Times, the New York Tribune at the time, like, really diving into it. But it's actually like 3 chapters of his book talking about monetary stuff. And one of the things that and it's like, you can kind of see him getting there. And then, like, the culmination is his article in the New York Times. But one of the quotes from that is, being greedy for money is the surest way not to get it. But when one serves for the sake of service, for the satisfaction of doing that which one believes to be right, then money abundantly takes care of itself. And the Andrew Tate example there, his service right now that he's providing to the world is kind of like giving people something to, look at. And I'm saying look at because I'm not saying it's something to strive for. Like, I don't think the Andrew Tate model is something to strive for. I do think, excuse me, I do think there is something to be said about having men who you can respect different aspects of. Like, I respect how disciplined and how hard he was working when he became a pro level boxer, like kickboxer. That takes a lot of hard work and discipline. Like, I do have a lot of, respect for that. What he's doing now with his money and how he's kind of like treating masculinity, I don't really love. I know it is more aligned with his religious affiliation, right? But I think one of the things that he's on the way to is on the path to ruin. And I think that goes back to the question of, like, are we trapped in a Bitcoin mindset? I think as a Bitcoiner, like, I cannot unsee that. The whole sovereign individual thesis is people are going to flee from a unjust fiat world into a more just and more libertarian place where they're being provided more value. And that's one thing that we're seeing all the time. This quote that I just read talks literally about, another quote is like, speculation into things already produced, that is not business. Like, that is literally the business of government. The business of the Fed is to basically be like, okay, so the current economic situation is we have this much inflation and we have this much business and we have this much GDP. So we've already produced this much. So if we just change these levers a little bit more, we'll be able to produce this much more. You're not doing anything. You're not producing anything. All you're actually doing is adding more hurdles and making it harder for people to do anything. Like, people who thrive in the business environment of the current day, like Elon Musk and, Jeff Bezos and all these other, current, like, titans, they did a really good job of navigating this regulatory capture and navigating this world where, at the end of the day, the only thing the government is adding is more regulation and more hurdles. But the reason they were able to navigate is because they were the first ones through the door. And so what you need to understand as a Bitcoiner is that the whole point of the fiat world is to put you in a box. And if you can see a way to get out of that box before they put you in that box, the opportunity you have then is you can look around and decide where you actually want to put your resources. What boxes do you want to actually fill up, or do you want to make your own? And so I think that's the thing that's the coolest about being in Bitcoin now, is you can kind of understand that, but being trapped in that mindset and knowing that, oh crap, like, most people don't care about getting out of the box is pretty lonely and sad sometimes, especially in LA.
I think the other side of that too, like, you're right about the government regulation, but the other side of it is the safeting thing, or the 0 to 1 thing. Safeting talks about in Bitcoin Standard that most of the inventions that have impacted our modern life in the 20th century all happened in the 18th century, like 1800s, or I guess 19th century, 1800s, right? The computer, the toilet, like just really basic stuff, all was invented at that point. First programming, right? And the only thing that's really happened, there hasn't really been much actual new inventions. The only thing that's really happened is just the optimization of those inventions. So on the government side, it's all about how do we regulate, how do we control, how do we, pull the levers. And on the business, the quote unquote capitalism side, which is really just at this point totally crony capitalism, all they've done is just made it more efficient. We're not actually going from 0 to 1 much, if at all. What we're doing is making microchips smaller and smaller and smaller year over year. And the consequences of that are life is a little bit deflationary in terms of the technology. And then things can kind of, work their way through that system, but nobody's really inventing a new car, right? Nobody's really going from a car or going from a train to a car, right? Those are big leaps, or from a horse to a car.
I want to bring it back real quick. You were saying that specifically for the In-N-Out founder, she's got $8 billion and she's kind of like ringing the alarm that California is not doing so well and that, Tennessee is a better place to live for her. And you were saying that she could take out billboards all over, like on every interstate.
Oh, I was saying Rogan. I was saying that for Rogan, but she could do the same thing too, right? Like just everybody, any billionaire who leaves California should be like attacking the reason why they can no longer, or they should no longer economically live in the best place on earth.
Yeah, most people do not know why inflation is happening. They don't even know what the negative consequences of inflation are. They certainly don't know about the canilian effect, that when there is inflation, the people who hold assets, especially a certain type of assets, the value of those assets increases before the people that don't have assets realize that the inflation has taken place. So the people who don't have the assets get poor faster. The people who have the assets get rich faster. It widens that gap. So you would think, okay, well then if you just have assets, then you are just benefiting from inflation. You're just going to get richer and richer and richer. So if I just get assets, I'll get richer. But inflation affects everybody negatively. And that is exactly what the founder of In-N-Out is saying. She's saying California is getting worse and worse and worse. There's homeless people everywhere. The crime is crazy. People are, they had to shut down an In-N-Out in Oakland because there was so much crime and people were getting robbed in the parking lot. Those are the effects of fiat and of inflation. So even for the rich, they're facing consequences as well. And then you have the other guy who says he has $500 million, which I kind of don't believe, by the way, and he doesn't know what to do with it. The reason he doesn't know what to do with it is because he's only focused on himself. He's unhappy, and he's just, how can I bring more pleasure to myself? Not realizing that it's more blessed to give than to receive. He has no concept of that. He's not actually trying to educate the world. He's trying to get rich off selling programs to younger people to try to tell them how to be scammers. He's just like a shitcoiner. The people that are losing their souls by possibly enriching themselves, just trying to just do a Ponzi scheme where they scam somebody faster than they can be found out so that they can rug pull before anybody else, so that they can take the money that they've stolen from people. It's thievery, and it sucks your soul dry. And I also, in that guy's case, he says he's Muslim. I don't even believe that. He's not actually a practicing Muslim. He's just looking for things that will pump up his own ego and give him justification for the things that he wants to do. And Bitcoin fixes all of that. That's what I was going to say.
The thing that's coming to mind as you're saying that is, again, the trapped in fiat thing. He's trapped in fiat. When you attain the certain levels of wealth, it's like the same thing with Rogan, the same thing with the In-N-Out founder. They're all trapped in the fiat world, the fiat mindset. When they attain a certain level of wealth, that necessarily puts them closer to the money printer. They get access to the better accounts. They get more inside information, right? They're closer to what's happening in terms of the money printer. Consequently, why on earth would they ever spend the $60 million on billboards that defame the money printer, right? Now that they're close to the money printer, they like it. It's nice up here, right? They don't want to, they're completely trapped by the system. Golden handcuffs, like, to the extreme. They will never fight the system. And it's literally just up to all the people who have exited the system, the Bitcoiners, the plebs, to actually go out there and do it, because nobody and not get close to the money printer themselves. And that's important, because a lot of, like, as we're seeing with all the treasury companies, oh yeah, we'll just get as close to the money printer as possible. Hey, maybe that's going to work out for you guys. Personally, I'm just like, oh my gosh, guys, you've lost your minds. But do not get close to the money printer. When you get close to the money printer, it's game over for you. Your entire mind is just captured, trapped.
It's interesting to me how so many Bitcoiners, they may not even have that much money in Bitcoin, but as soon as they understand that there is a way to escape suffering inflation, even if they put $5,000 into Bitcoin and they held onto it for a year or two, and they've seen that amount in dollar terms increase, and they've started to understand the implications of Bitcoin, their life philosophy starts to change as their time preference slows. And there are so many people that have a bad life philosophy, and more money is never going to change that life philosophy. They get richer and richer in fiat, and yet they don't have a good philosophy. And so they're not going to go and try to educate people and fight the system, because it's like you have to establish the philosophy first. And without that, you're forever going to be missing. Yeah. Anyway, it's just interesting. Like, Bitcoiners, so often, it's not the amount of Bitcoin they have. It's not how rich they are. It's just understanding the implications. So before we went on this, JD was like, get some facts together. And he wanted to talk about Henry Ford. And what instantly popped into my head was, I was like, there were a number of people who basically came up with Bitcoin way before Bitcoin existed. They had no idea how it was going to be accomplished, but they could see that once it was discovered how to do it, that it was going to change everything. And so I put together a little list. So I'm just going to read them off real quick. So Henry Ford was one of them. Henry Ford came up with the concept of energy currency, which was a form of money backed by energy units rather than government issued fiat or gold. And he suggested that a currency like that would be more stable, less prone to manipulation by central authorities. Sounds very similar to Bitcoin. Another guy, if you've ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, John Nash came up with this concept of ideal money, which was a theoretical currency that would be stable and non-inflationary, independent of government control, and potentially managed through mathematical or algorithmic principles. Again, it's just Bitcoin. David Chaum, was he mentioned in the white paper? I can't remember.
He was cited.
I think so.
For
he was cited, yeah. So he came up with eCash, which had blind signatures for untraceable payments. You could argue that Bitcoin is traceable, but as we all know, there's many ways around that. The book, The Sovereign Individual, talked about a coming digital cash or cyber cash, which was a form of money that could operate outside the control of governments and central banks. And then two more, Milton Friedman, he had a quote where he said, "I think that the internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. The one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable e-cash," even called it e-cash, "a method whereby the internet, by On the internet, you can transfer funds from A to B without A knowing B or B knowing A. The way I can take a $20 bill and hand it over to you, and there's no record of where it came from. And then Friedrich Hayek, who was also of the Austrian school, and there's a video. It's a really short clip if you want to look it up. It's called Predicting Bitcoin in 1984, a sly roundabout way. This is the last thing I'll say. He said, I don't believe we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of the government. That is, we can't take them violently out of the hands of the government. All we can do is by some sly roundabout way, introduce something they can't stop.
Bitcoin.
And we have that now. It's called Bitcoin.
Yep. Those quotes are all so good. I love those references.
Those are all great, and I think one of the things that I wanted to bring up, and we're going to see how this works, is I just had GPT make a canilian effect graphic, but this is pretty much accurate. The money creation goes to everybody near the money printer, and everyone else just kind of gets screwed. And so I think what's really interesting though about this is if you, don't fully grasp the divide, this is actually a great breakdown. Because at the end of the day, they don't want you to know about the money printer, or rather how the money printer works, because that's how the game works. There's a reason.
The game.
The game is to confuse. The game is to divide. The game is to make everybody feel alone. There's a reason they call options and stocks calls and puts, which is different than shorts and longs, which is different than, CDOs, which is different than swaps, which is different. Like they come up with a jargon that the people within the game understand and live by. And that jargon and that understanding of that jargon means you understand how the game works. And so we get to a really, really interesting place when momentum starts to get behind something, Bitcoin in this case, that breaks your mind free from where you're trapped. Because we are all born into a game that we are trapped in, period. No one watching this right now, no one on this call opted into this system. We were just born into the system. And the system was created by men to keep other men in line in such a way that they could be serviced by those men. That's it. Like at the end of the day, you had a group of people, an elite, that were like, all right, cool. We want to stay elite. We want to stay at the top of control. We want to stay everywhere for good or bad, right? There are people like George Washington who knew, hey, if you make me a king, I will be the first king. And by the way, I'm going to die because I'm immortal. And we don't want a king. That's why we left the king. And so I think that's the biggest thing with what you're talking about before, Bondor, about ideas moving us from 0 to 1. Bitcoin is not a 0 to 1 idea. It's not. Money was the 0 to 1. A medium of exchange that was not the object was the 0 to 1 moment. Bitcoin is just the current, new, and best iteration of that 0 to 1 change. And so what's really cool about that is because Bitcoin is just an optimization, eventually everyone will understand it. Whether you understand it before you're forced into understanding it is your choice.
So I think we've all made this mistake of thinking that people are just idiots for not getting Bitcoin. But people are not idiots. If you understand the bell curve of intelligence, most people are kind of average intelligence. And if you're of average intelligence, it's very, very simple to understand that, especially if you're an American, that the government can print an endless amount of money. They can pay for anything they want to. But the faster that they do that, the more it devalues the money, the more expensive that things will get. And your salary cannot keep up with how expensive things are getting. So they got to be a little careful. They can't print too fast because then people will get unruly. It's very easy to understand that. And so I've spent a lot of time just like, why are people not getting this? How do they not see that Bitcoin is the solution to this? And the answer is so simple. It's that the people who are doing this are bad people and they are lying. A smart person can figure this out. But the thing is, if a scam artist, if a con artist comes up and tells you that their name is something that is not really their name, or they're from a place that is not really where they're from, you will believe them because you have no reason not to believe them. Humans are very, very susceptible to being lied to. It is very hard to tell when somebody is lying to you. So what we're doing is we're trying to ring the alarm and tell people that they are being lied to by the Federal Reserve. They are being lied to by the government that is printing more money than they say they're printing and is devaluing your money and making your life worse and enriching themselves. And that's why people aren't getting it, because they're being lied to.
Mm-hmm. The Anton, or not Anton, JD, which you said earlier, like there is an elite. There's always going to be an elite. The thing that's nefarious about a fiat system is that the elite can lie to you about the nature of the system, and the consequences there is that, oh, everyone gets to just be free and work how they want to work and do what they want to do and raise their families and all this other stuff, because they're printing money. And when they print money at below the terminal rate of massive violent revolution, they can just continue this system. And everybody in the system who works for fiat money is perpetuating the system and enslaving themselves at whatever it is, 10% per year, because that's the inflation rate. You are 10% of your time is just slave labor, unpaid, that you cannot get back, that you cannot exit from, you cannot do anything about, apart from just endure the 10% slavery, soft totalitarianism.
What's really wild about that, and Henry Ford is talking about this too, is actually, I think as Bitcoiners, we are too idealistic. I think we are trapped in this mindset that we are very lucky that we're around a lot of really, really smart people. I think you actually do have to be on the ends of the bell curve to fully grasp Bitcoin, because at the end of the day, you are either too dumb.
The lower end. Yeah, the lower end. You have to be on the lower end.
I'm on the lower end here.
I'm on the retarded end.
I think all of us are. Hopefully the 32 people watching right now are on the other side and they're just feeling sorry for us. But the key here is you have to be on the ends of the spectrum of understanding, because at the end of the day, it's too comfortable in the middle. And there's comfort in knowing that you're going to get a paycheck on Monday or Friday or whatever it is. And you know that you have a place you need to go, and you know that somebody needs something, because you don't have to think. You don't have to agonize over what is my purpose. You don't have to agonize over how do I help a bunch of people. You don't have to agonize over a lot of these things that all you want to think about is just what's going to be on TV on Sunday or tomorrow. Like, the world is built by men and women who want to make the world different in some way, shape, or form. And that's not everybody. And that's also okay. And I think that's the thing that as Bitcoiners is tough sometimes for us to understand and swallow. Not everybody wants to be a leader, and not everybody needs to be a leader. And I think right now, we're coming up to the wave of, we're on the bell curve of adoption too, right? Or like the way the adoption curves goes. And I think we're still probably at the front end of that bell curve of adoption. With, we're definitely not at the innovators, and, we're probably still with the trailblazers, and maybe we're in the early adopters, probably closer to the early adopter phase. But as soon as we get into the mass adoption phase of Bitcoin isn't going to be fun anymore. Bitcoin is just going to be rote. Bitcoin is going to be the common understanding. It's just like the US dollar after Bretton Woods, just became the understanding. This is the business handshake. This is the jargon of business. Bitcoin will become the jargon of business, and it will be boring eventually. And you will then be trapped in that Bitcoin world, which I think all of us would argue would be better for you. But the challenge is going to be, how do we get people who like being trapped to understand that the grass isn't greener on the other side. Going back to the fiat system where you have rulers is not actually a better world for you. And they saw this in Exodus, right? When the Jews were cast out of Egypt and they left Egypt and they went through the Red Sea. If you don't know the story, you know, Moses had the Red Sea part and the Jews ran through it and then the sea came back together and it killed all the Egyptians who were chasing them. Great story. You should read it. But they got out of their oppression. They got on the path to what God was planning to give them, which was the promised land. And they just started grumbling. And that is what the majority of people want to do. Is the majority of people just want stuff handed to them. We see that with welfare. We see that with, you know, social security checks. And so I think where we're trapped as Bitcoiners is we're trapped in this idealized world of, oh, everybody wants the best for everybody. It's just not the case. Sadly.
Yeah, I love that you bring up the welfare thing too, because we tend to think about, like, as Bitcoiners, we tend to think about the canilian effect, the closeness to the money printer, as like it's all the elite billionaires, it's all the, you know, Elon Musk's and Joe Rogan's and oh my gosh, Bill Gates and all the rest of them, right? The politicians, and you go down the list, right? But there's other ways to get close to the money printer, one of which is welfare, right? Hey, that's the shortcut way. We just get on the welfare cliff because, oh, well, that's all they print a bunch of money and it goes to the welfare system. And so all the people who are not working and just vote for welfare check after welfare check, they are actually closer to the money printer than the person who is working 60 hours a week, making minimum wage, trying to just pay his rent, right? The person in the middle there, they're the furthest from the money printer. The absolute impoverished person who just relies on the government for all of the handouts is closer to the money printer than the person who is actually trying to be a responsible human being.
Yeah, if you're on Section 8 and you're getting EBT, then you really got nothing to worry about. In fact, usually when inflation ramps up, the government does these programs that only apply to the absolute poorest people and gives them more free stuff. So actually, in a way, as things get worse, as inflation gets worse, if you are a poor person who's on the government dole, you're actually getting more.
Yep.
Which is so twisted.
Yep.
It's the borrower is slave to the lender, and borrowing government money, i.e. welfare, is not the way people think. Like, you don't have to be in debt, physical debt with a credit card or whatever it is, to be slave. Welfare makes you a slave. It does. That's why they call them poverty pimps. Because at the end of the day, if you're listening to Maxine Waters or any of the Republicans, too, Mitch McConnell, doesn't matter. It's a uniparty. You are stuck in the matrix of red versus blue, and you are a slave. Mentally, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, monetarily and physically. And so the only way to break free is to start thinking for yourself. But that requires two things. You want to think for yourself, one, and two, you have the capacity to think for yourself. Henry Ford's book is also fascinating because he did a lot of work actually trying to help people. Like, everybody gives him such a bad rap. And like, reading this book totally blows my mind. Like, yes, he's who gave us the 40-hour work week. But the reason he gave us the 40-hour work week is because he wanted to provide that consistency that men need. People crave consistency. And one of the things that he talks about in the book is actually the better way to work would be if you come and work for 4 months in a factory, the 4 months when it's snowing, and then the rest of the time you go out and work in the field. Again, different times, right? We have different machines and stuff like that back in, you know, the late 1880s and then early 1900s when it was written. But one of the things that he talked about is men don't want to work, but the ones who do want to work will. And so he had all these systems where, you know, they basically would test people who had one arm or one eye or who were deaf or bedridden. And he's like, the men who had the obstacle were far and away better performers than the normal men. Because if you're bedridden, but you need purpose, and Ford gives you a job at a Ford factory, like just screwing, tightening a nut or whatever it is, you are ecstatic that you can have purpose and something to do. And so the problem we have right now is we just have such a dearth of purpose. We have so few people who have a desire to do something because they don't know what to do. And, this is such a challenge. So I challenge you, and I'm charging myself too. This is one of the things that I'm personally working on. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this thing is like, I'm really trying to figure out how I can add value to as many people as possible. Like, I know what I'm good at, but Bitcoin just made me think completely differently, because at the end of the day, how do I make the biggest impact to the most number of people and make everything better for as many people as I can?
I know we like to turn things positive after the 30-minute mark, and we're way over it. Have you ever wondered how a homeless person sustains a drug addiction? Because drugs, I mean, I wouldn't know, but drugs are expensive, especially if you're doing drugs all day, every day, and you got to pay cash for them. Where does a homeless person that doesn't have an income get the money to sustain a daily drug addiction? And why would it's the government? Why would the government give them money to then turn around and pay the drug dealers who are working for cartels? And I can speak about Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, we have this thing that you could call the homeless industrial complex. The more homelessness that exists, the more fiat money that gets printed, that gets thrown at the problem, that goes first to the people who can give favors to their crony friends who are supposedly running these programs that help the homeless people. So by increasing the drug addicts, giving the money to the drug dealers and the cartels, the people who are running the show get richer and make more money off of the pain and suffering of the people. Again, it's so twisted. It's unbelievable, but it's what it is.
Did you guys see this? The USAID, did you guys see this? The Cal Fire concert that raised $100 million and had all Lady Gaga, all these like big names, Billie Eilish, raised $100 million, and zero of it went to actually helping the fire victims in California. All of it went to charities. Yeah. That's the
where that fire
in large part, like NAACP, like race-based charities, advancing black things. Just like there's like literally nothing to do with fire relief at all. Marketed as a cause, it's just absolute opportunism. Yeah. Right. But it's like good. This is also just an artifact of the fiat system that if you didn't know it, this has been around. This particular scam, which is throw a benefit concert for the whatever thing, it's been around for a long time. One of the famous ones was the famous Freddie Mercury concert in 1975, which is the ultra, like everyone is aware of this concert. I'm trying to figure out what the name
Project Red, wasn't it?
Live Aid.
Live Aid. Yeah. Which went for the purpose of this concert was throw this huge concert, raise tons, millions of dollars for the purpose of saving people from a crazy famine that was, I don't know what the country was, but there's a huge famine in Africa, right? How much of that money went to the famine victims? So a lot of it went to purchasing guns for the government of that country. And it's like, why would this, like, why is this even making news? Why is this $100 million for the benefit aid of Palisade or fire victims, etc.? Why are people even upset about this? They should have the expectation, again, trapped in the fiat mind. It's almost like you forgot what happened 6 months before, right? Like, no, this particular scam has been happening for a long time. This is a standard scam. And yet here we are. We're just trapped in the fiat world. Yeah, we're going to raise a bunch of money. Everyone's going to be happy. We're going to be so good. We're going to do such good things. So good. So good. And here we are. People just
the biggest thing about that's actually freaking wild. So I just had GPT make me another one of these things, but I'm going to throw this one up here really quick. But the biggest issue with all this stuff, this actually goes exactly what we're talking about right now, is at the end of the day, if fiat money died, all of our problems would go away. They would. We would have different problems. There would still be
different problems.
Right? Problems aren't going to go away. Problems are a piece of life.
80% of our modern problems would definitely go away.
Yeah, and this is actually a great chart to explain that. This is the Cantillon effect in perfect definition of a bell curve. Is you have all of the wealthy welfare people, and then the super poor charity people. Actually, I'd probably put wealthy on the right and super poor on the left, coming up on welfare. But it's actually not wrong, right? Because the wealthy hide behind the welfare that they're providing, or the charity. Yeah, it's backwards, but I'll flip it. But this is exactly it. And what happens though is when this is solved, this Cantillon effect problem is solved, is I probably shouldn't throw those up because then it like messes with stuff for later. But we're trapped right now in a fiat world, and what that means is there is no escape. Because the point of the fiat system is to keep you trapped. The point of a Bitcoin system is to make you think. The beauty is if you don't want to think, there will always be people who want to give you a job so you don't have to think, which is actually great. There's going to be more opportunity for that in a Bitcoin standard. The challenge of the fiat system, though, which is where we're stuck, is that system does not want to die because the people at the top of that system, they don't want to work. And that is a very big problem because they know the way to not work is to push a button and print some money.
And the closer you get to the money printer, the more inclined you are to believe that and dig into that and make that your purpose. Oh, my purpose is just, I don't need to work anymore. I can just print the button. I don't have to do it.
When Bitcoin fully takes over, the whole world is not just going to turn into utopia overnight. We have examples, because everything is cyclical, of time periods when the money was harder and art was more beautiful. Architecture was built with more foresight. The things that were built in those time periods stand the test of time, last for centuries, sometimes 1,000 years. It'll be more like that, but the issues of human greed and jealousy and violence and things like that, those things will still exist. But you can look at those time periods and see that some of the things in your life that you can just sense are lacking now will be fixed by Bitcoin. But it is not a magic bullet to just create utopia. I just want to express that because I think sometimes people look at Bitcoiners as delusional, thinking because we say Bitcoin solves this, that we think that Bitcoin just magically solves every single problem and death and the sinful nature of human beings just goes away. We're not religious about Bitcoin. I just want to express that.
You might not be. I will say it did cure my psoriasis. As soon as I got a little bit of Bitcoin, it just went away. I'm just, not financial advice though, or a doctor advice, because
one of the things that Bitcoin definitely solves is the thing, JD, that you were just talking about, which is the dearth of purpose. Bitcoin brings back purpose to people's lives because they can actually spend their time and trade it for value. In the fiat denominated world, every time you spend your time to trade it for value, which you think is value, is denominated in money. And a part of that money is just taken away. And so a part of your purpose is just taken away. It's purposeless. There's 90% purpose and 10% meaningless slavery to somebody who you will never meet and who does not care about you and actively hates you. Right? That's cross purpose. And when you're at a cross purpose, the value of your purpose, the intensity of your purpose is undermined. You are undermining your own purpose about what you're doing. The consequences of that are just a dearth of purpose. Bitcoin takes all of that away and restores real purpose to real people. It allows them to expend real effort and receive real value in return, add real value to the world, actually fix real problems, make real progress about things. It's going to be awesome.
when you get paid in fiat, you're taxed 4 times. You're taxed with the trading your time for money. You're taxed instantly when you're paid by the income taxes that you pay on that money. You're taxed when you save your money because you have a ticking clock. You have to spend the money because the longer that it sits in your checking account, the more it's being devalued day by day by day. And you're taxed a 4th time because if you have a salary, you are locked in at a fixed rate. And so if let's say your salary is $100,000, every single day of that year, that $100,000 is becoming less valuable because inflation is taking place. The only thing that could counteract that is if your salary was increased by 3%, 5%, 8%, 10%, depending on what the amount of inflation is. Every single day that you're working, if your salary is increased. So you start out the year making $100,000, and at the end of the year, you make $130,000, and the next year you make $200,000, and the next year you make $400,000. But that's not the way it works. Your salary is fixed. And if you want an increase, you have to negotiate a year later after your salary's already been devalued. So you're negotiating just to maintain your salary. You're literally taxed 4 times. So when you start saving in Bitcoin, you are saving in a money that never gets diluted. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. And this is so hard to understand. It's not that there's $1 trillion and one day there'll be 1.2 trillion. It's that there's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, and one day there'll be infinity trillions of dollars. Fiat money gets devalued endlessly. There is no top to the devaluation of money, but Bitcoin is only 21 million ever.
Did you guys know they just found a way to turn mercury into gold? Not the planet, but the element. So they're literally doing a new nuclear reaction that allows them to change mercury into gold. So
Fantastic.
gold bugs, watch
Debase
out.
the gold. Debase it. Just gone. There's no reason for gold apart from various electronic uses. But
I think the other thing about like, are you trapped is like, are you like, do you feel trapped? Like if you feel trapped, that means you're trapped in the Bitcoin system. Or sorry, said that wrong. If you feel trapped, like if you're feeling trapped, you are trapped in the fiat system. Period. Like feeling trapped is actually a symptom of the fiat system. Because in the Bitcoin world, all you can see is opportunity. There is a world where you can feel trapped because you can't do enough. And I think that's a different form of like, you know, obsession, if you will. Like, it's like you see the mortality of your life, like the finite nature of your life. But I think that's the biggest value Bitcoin can give you. Bitcoin moves your time preference from high to low. A low or slow time preference is actually a good time preference, because if you're looking at things on a long time horizon, you're going to steward it. You're going to steward your garden. You're going to make it grow. You're going to actually like watch your basket of goods and make sure that the inflation in that basket of goods isn't going way out of whack to where you need to remove something from that basket of goods. So you don't actually count it in CPI. So that way you can continue to lie people because you have a high time preference, because you want to change what the inflation actually is to make sure people feel safe so they can actually spend. So CPI can actually stay relatively close to 2% when it's actually closer to like 100. Like that is the issue we have here, is we have a system built on high time preference when low time preference is actually the way to do things. Like the great Chinese proverb of when was the best time to plant an oak tree? 20 years ago. When's the best time now? Or when's the next best time now? Bitcoin is now. That's it. And then Bitcoin is a low time preference.
I think that Chinese proverb is actually not a Chinese proverb, because you can like look it up. It's not from China. I'm pretty sure it is a bona fide Bitcoin proverb. Like didn't exist until Bitcoin came about, and it's only ever used in Bitcoin circles. Like it's just it's a cultural phenomenon that you can see changing, and it reminds me of just what, like, how do you frame this? There's this zeitgeist in the fiat world, right? And in this zeitgeist, there's particular things that are appropriate, not appropriate. One of those things that's not appropriate is this idea of, oh, well, when was the best time to plant things? 20 years ago. What's the best time? Plant it now. That's just, it doesn't, like, there's no reality to that, because in a fiat world, there's no such thing as 20 years ago. It didn't exist, right? Like the 1984 version of, like, there is no past, there is no future. It's just the eternal now of, oh yeah, we just rewrite the past, doesn't matter. So there's no 20 years ago in a fiat world, but there is in a Bitcoin world. It's like connected to reality. It's connected to a timeline. So part of that, which I think is interesting, is that the fiat system has the psychist that, I'm pronouncing that word wrong. I don't know how to pronounce it. Zeitgeist. And part of that is there's the Overton window. There's things that are appropriate and there's things that are not appropriate. And there's various, like, borders around the appropriateness. In a fiat world, the window is perpetually shifting towards higher time preference. Me here now, drug, sex, violence, like just the debasement of everything, absolute absurdity on absurdity, right? In a Bitcoin world, which we are already seeing, the zeitgeist, the Overton window pushes in the other direction. It lowers the time preferences, right? And I'm convinced that we are actually seeing this in the actual culture. Like, it's not appropriate to do these kind of things anymore. We actually see that in real time, right? Like, this is what happened on the left's mistakes about what you could do with COVID, right? There's all these Bitcoiners. Like, before Bitcoin, you couldn't just speak out and it be like, okay. But with Bitcoin, you could speak out because you couldn't get shut down. That's a change of how society and how culture functions. So we actually see the culture being affected by Bitcoin. We actually see this ultra slow moving Titanic level turnaround, or just insane mass that is actually changing course. And in terms of, hey, Bitcoin makes everything better, like, yeah, this is exactly what it's doing. It is affecting culture in ways that are slow and often imperceptible, but absolutely real and quantifiable. And it's winning. It's actually pushing culture forward. It's actually breaking the fiat trap. It's undoing this damage that has been assaulting human conscious for 100 years. It's incredible. Ultra bullish.
A lot of people think that what we're saying about inflation is some sort of conspiracy theory. They just don't buy it that inflation is as high as what we are saying that it is. The truth is that the Federal Reserve, and through a bunch of processes, it's not only the Federal Reserve, they are printing trillions of dollars. That money will go into scarce assets. So scarce assets are things like really valuable real estate, or old vintage cars that are one of a kind, that are well maintained, or watches, or gold and silver, things like this. So eventually this incredible pressure is going to go into something. We're saying it's going to go into Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to suck it up like a black hole. And I just want people to know that the price of Bitcoin, it may sound insane to say that Bitcoin is going to $1 million, but the longer that this lasts, the more money that is printed, that number becomes more and more huge. And there is no number that is too big of a number, because they will print forever. So the longer that we go and this doesn't happen, I would say, this is my opinion, obviously not financial advice, Bitcoin is either going to go to infinity in dollar terms, or something's going to happen, Bitcoin's going to break, and it's going to go to zero. I would argue it's much more likely that it goes to infinity and it goes to zero. So I am also ultra bullish.
What's really exciting about the world right now and about Bitcoin is going to bring about a resurgence of 100-year cathedrals. If you're not familiar with it, the cathedral in Milano in Italy took about 250 years to build. And there are currently only one 100-year cathedral project being built. And it's not even that it's being built, it's actually just being completed. And so the big thing right now is when we have people start operating on a system that is a low time preference system, they're going to start thinking about 100-year cathedrals. They're going to start thinking about solving problems that they will never see solved. Elon Musk operates on that wavelength already. He may never see us get to Mars, but he is working on that 100-year problem. And so what's going to be interesting when you start reflecting on it is now they talk about 10 years ago, if you hadn't bought that Nintendo Switch, you would have 5,000 Bitcoin, whatever it is. I think the better way to think about that is 100 years from now, if you have 1 Bitcoin today, what seeds could you be planting that Bitcoin has grown into?
I think that about wraps us up over here. Those are some, I think, good final last words, everybody. And we should probably just leave it at that.
Cheers, y'all.
All right. Peace.